It seems clear to me that truth is stranger than dreams. Because if 2 years ago I had fallen asleep one night and I'd had a dream that fewer than 25% of the congregation showed up to a Shabbat morning, and I looked out on them and they were all wearing masks, I would have assumed that that dream was telling me that my congregation is disappearing. And yet I'm standing here and that dream has come true, and what it really means is that the congregation is coming back. Truth is stranger than dreams. And this morning, I want to begin by recalling to you one of the most important moments in all of Jewish history that almost nobody remembers. It's in the book of Kings. And it's when Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, dedicates the first temple. A really important moment. And he says to God, Lihiyot einecha petuchot, God, your eyes should be open. But then he says something very strange, lishmoa, to listen to us. First of all, because of course God doesn't have eyes and ears. But also because when you do something monumental, it involves all the senses. What we see, what we hear, what we imagine. And this was monumental. Solomon was dedicating the sanctuary, just as this morning in the Torah portion, we read about the first sacrifices in the Mishkan. And in the Haftarah, we read about David bringing the Torah back to Jerusalem for a rededication. And this theme has gone throughout Jewish history. After the first temple is destroyed under Ezra and Nehemiah, the Jews come back from Persia to rededicate the second temple, or the renewal at least of the first. And then, of course, the second temple is destroyed as well. It's destroyed in 70, and then the Jews are exiled in 135. And it's gone. And the dream is over. Until 73 years ago, this coming week, which is Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, this week. And you realize when you put all those things together that if you wanted to sum up Jewish history in one word, it would be return. Just when you think we're not coming back, we come back. For thousands of years in the land of Israel, they said the Jews aren't coming back. And we came back. And what is the law that exists in Israel that exists in no other country in the world? It's called the law of return. Because any Jew who wants to come back to Israel gets to return. And this Shabbat, for us at Sinai, this is the Shabbat of return. It is not the first time in Jewish history or in Sinai's history that this has happened. 100 years ago, a little bit more, when the Spanish flu hit and the plague was real for several months at Sinai, there were no services. And then the Jews came back. Throughout Jewish history, there have been plagues. And Jews have always had to deal with them. Very famously, in 1848, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, one of the greatest rabbis of the century, in the midst of a terrible plague of cholera, stood up on the bima on Yom Kippur and told Jews to eat. and ate himself. Because pikuach nefesh, doche Shabbat, doche Yom Kippur, because saving a life is more important than Shabbat, is more important than Yom Kippur. And if you want more connections, remember what happens in this week's Torah portion that our Bat Mitzvah spoke about. Nadav and Avihu die, and one of the reasons that is given by the rabbis is when Moshe says to Aharon, Bikrovai ekadesh, those who grow close to me are sanctified. The rabbis say Nadav and Avihu, they got too close. It's what happens to Uzzah in the Haftorah. The ark, the oxen are stumbling. He thinks the ark is falling. He tries to put it up. He gets too close and he is struck down. What have we been afraid of all year long? That someone will get too close. When you walk down the street, the natural instinct now is to move to the other side when someone else is coming because you're not supposed to get too close. And what do we have to do now that, thank God, we are starting to come back? We have to return. Return to closeness. Return to synagogue. Now we invoke the law of return. Not because we missed crowds, but because we missed community. We weren't lacking for entertainment, but we yearned for inspiration. Beginning with this Shabbat, we start the process of return. And I know that we'll do it because that's what Jews do. They return. They come back to their synagogues. They come back to their land. They come back to one another. And they come back to God. Teshuvah means return. And when you make tshuva, you return to that which is best in you and you return to God. This is a time of tshuva. Not as much in the sense of repentance as in the sense of return. The spirit and the sanctity of this place, of this very room that has held so many prayers for so many years, it needs tshuva. It needs return. It was the first time that people swayed to Lador Vador in this place in over a year. It was a moment of return. In this year of loss, we discovered what it is that we love. Yehuda Amichai, the great Hebrew poet, has a poem called Lost Objects, and it begins from announcements in the paper and on bulletin boards. I found out about things that have gotten lost. That's how I know what people owned and what they love. When you feel that you've really lost something, you feel how much you love it. We've lost being together, and we opened our doors hesitantly, and some are afraid of coming back, and I understand that, and that's why we will continue to reach out. You may know the beautiful Hasidic story about the king and his son who are estranged from one another. And years go by, and the king desperately wants to see his son again. So he sends his trusted minister. He says, go and find him and tell him, I forgive everything. Please come back. And the minister returns to the king and he says, I found your son. And he said, he's not ready to come back. And the king said, go back to him and say, come as far as you can, and wherever you are, I will meet you there. Why do we have screens in the sanctuary? Because some will not yet come back, but wherever they are, we will meet them there. Anyone who wants to worship with us, anyone who wants to be a part of our community, our people, our prayers, we will meet them there. All they have to do is return a little bit, because that's what Jews do. The sanctuary is here. We are here. God is here. Now, members of Sinai, Jewish people, all we need is you. It's time to do teshuvah. It's time to return. Shehecheyanu.